Welcome to ReelTalk,
where it gets hot,
spicy,
and to the drama.
I'm Tess. You may know me from ReelShort hits such as Surrender to My Professor, How to Tame a Silver Fox, and Swimming My Way Back to You, with more to come. And today I'm here with Olivia Ku.
Hi, I'm Olivia Ku, and I'm the intimacy coordinator on a lot of your favorite shows, such as Fated to My Forbidden Alpha, Quarterback Next Door, Snatched a Billionaire, and Tess and I got to work on Surrender to My Professor together.
And we're here to talk about some interesting facts about your job and how we work together.
So exciting.
Hi, Olivia.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
The last time we saw each other was when?
Oh, a week ago.
A week ago. We got coffee together. Because we loved working with each other so much.
We did. It was amazing.
Olivia, I don't think everyone knows you that well because you're usually not in front of the camera. You're behind it. So can you tell the people about yourself?
Yes. So I'm Olivia Ku, and I am an intimacy coordinator. For those of you who don't know what that is, a little bit about my background. I actually used to be an actress, so that informs a lot of my work. And then I spent years working in health and wellness, as well as survivor advocacy. So all of that kind of brought me together to intimacy coordinating. My first experience around that was my sister's boyfriend at the time actually sent me an article on intimacy coordinators during the pandemic. And I was like, oh, this makes sense. I think I want to do this. And basically started doing a lot of training and everything because we were all stuck at home. Mm-hmm. And once that started happening and I realized I really loved it, getting back on set in the role, was everything. I was like, wow, I feel like I naturally have all these skill sets from just my history of trying to find the thing that I love. So now I get to live it. It's pretty cool.
When you work with people who are not on the acting side of things but used to be, it's just so clear because a lot of the stuff that we have to do with our jobs is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous ask, and some people don't kind of have that empathy just because they've never been there. And so it was really a blessing that you had the background that you did.
I think it's also how you talk to actors too. I think sometimes adjustments with certain things of choreography or something like that, letting the actor know why we're doing that, yes. what it means.
I'm such a why girl. I'm like, why? Why? I'm like a little kid. I'm a 3-year-old.
Faster.
You and I worked together on a little project called
Surrender to My Professor.
Yeah. You were the intimacy coordinator on that one. That was actually my first ReelShort that I did.
Really?
Yeah. So I had not worked with ReelShort before. I had done other verticals, but I had never done anything sort of that tone. It was all very traditional, billionaire, mistaken identity. So this was definitely a new world for me. Had you done anything like that?
So I feel like I've done nearly every vertical genre. So actually I started with ReelShort on one of the very first ones, Fated to My Forbidden Alpha. And I remember there was one camera. I remember I was with the director. We're in the bathroom. I'm in the bathtub. The set is so small that I'm curled up in the bathtub trying to watch the monitor. And I was like, what are we filming? Because the lines were also so funny. She was really into fried chicken for some reason. And then she also bathed from a bucket. And I think that's one of the classic social media lines now from that show. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I started working on other things like Snatched by a Billionaire. Recently, Quarterback Next Door that came out, True Heiress versus Fake Queen Bee. So just a lot of different shows. And ours was definitely one where they amped up the intimacy. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. For people who don't know what intimacy coordinating is, it's basically a newer role in the industry. So if you think of a stunt coordinator, it's very similar to that, except we're dealing with intimacy. So that means that we're prepping everything ahead of time in pre-production. We're having conversations with directors, with actors, with different department heads. we're looking at contracts and nudity writers and all of those things, like logistically, to make sure that everything is well prepared by the time that we get to filming.
Right.
That way, everyone also has informed consent at the top, so actors know what they'll be performing, what they want to negotiate, like that sort of thing. We're kind of a liaison between everybody. We also help production in general reduce risk overall.
Yes.
And also facilitate those like really difficult conversations sometimes about certain things that maybe the production wants to ask of actors to do. And then when we get to set, it's very much like supporting like the team, choreographing. Ideally, we have a separate rehearsal day, but a lot of times because of the fast pace of vertical environments, rehearsals like right before we shoot the scene. So helping the director with choreography, supporting the team with like any technical adjustments and notes and stuff like that. And I like to cater my work to each individual. So some actors, I feel like, want a lot of choreo support, and then other ones rather find it. So we'll define boundaries, of course.
It's a very sensitive situation to be in. And I think that you do such a good job of just being such a safe space.
Oh, that's so sweet. I think also like it's about like creating that environment so that everybody has the tools so that if they need to take a halt or if you just need some water, we can do that.
I get so lightheaded doing, especially like
heavy
breathing, and they love the heavy breathing. So I'll like always get the note that's like more breathing, more breath. So I'm sitting there going like hyperventilating, and then they'll call cut, and I'm like, I'm really lightheaded. and so like I always have water on standby, and sometimes you're not wearing very many clothes, so like I can't go get my own water. So like the intimacy coordinator bringing me water, I'll have a piece of candy and water so that my blood sugar is all good and I'm staying hydrated.
Or sometimes just like they need a 5, here's your robe, we'll take a 5 and then come back.
So Olivia, what do you have on standby?
So I have my Icy Kit with the emotional support Labubu. Basically, this is a kit for intimacy coordinating, and just like hair and makeup would have their kit, this is mine. This is the basic kit that I will always wear and bring to set. I also have additional stuff depending on like what we need for different types of scenes, whether we need like a Pilates ball or...
It's surrender to my professor, and Tess needs to be wearing 5 pairs of underwear.
Yeah.
Because I was wearing 5 pairs of underwear like at all times that entire shoot.
Or like barriers, or just all different pillows, like all different kinds of things. But some of the highlights of this bag, mints, of course, like so many mints. And then also in the kit, I have deodorant wipes. We love that because sometimes intimacy is at the end of the day and it's nice to freshen up.
I have not found a single deodorant that can last me through a 12-hour shoot.
Right, exactly.
Not one.
Also, gum tends to be a big one.
That one's hard for me because like then you have to spit it out before the take.
This is the usual.
Okay.
Well, sometimes
challenging it.
I'm like, also these are something I found recently, which you might love. Do you know what this is?
No.
To-go mouthwash.
Ooh, where do you spit it? Just on the ground?
Usually, so if I have the to-go ones, I'll hand it ahead of the scene. That way you can mouthwash, and then like by the time you get to set, like we're all good to go.
Yeah.
But sometimes, as you know, like spit it back in the cup and hand the cup back to Olivia. Listerine. This is also the number one. Actors just love this.
Don't ever put 3 in your mouth. Don't ever do that.
Yeah, so those are fun. I think I also have scissors in here. One of also the most used items, and it's now in like a little Ziploc baggie because I use it so often. It's like drink, you know?
Topstick.
So Topstick, if for those that don't know, is actually men's toupee tape. And the reason I carry this is because it's double-sided tape. The adhesive is skin safe. I mean, if you have a skin sensitivity, it might be a little bit.
I am someone who is allergic to a lot of adhesives, and Topstick and me are like that. It's like my bra strap keeps coming out, and so that's a situation in which I would use Topstick.
Take a piece of Topstick.
I love Topstick. I've been in like bras that just straight up don't fit. And so Topsticking them to myself. Okay.
Here we go. This is what it's used for. Usually very last minute on set where we have to just like stick something down.
And I will thank Olivia Ku for like top stick as a solution to everything. It's
so
like the duct tape.
The middle you can pull in. There you go.
There we go. It's like the duct tape, I feel like, of the intimacy coordinating world.
Yes. You know what? A lot of times what I've been using it for is also, this is I feel like a movie magic problem where there's so many buttons on a men's shirt. So we'll unbutton it and then top stick it down. So then you'll unbutton one and then they can just go like this. Mm-hmm. And that tends to be.
I can't unbutton shirts.
I feel like costume has their own vision of what all of the characters look like and everything. And sometimes it's not the best for the intimacy scenes because you'll have like 20 layers on and we're like, okay, we're just.
So there in comes top stick.
Yes.
In comes top stick to solve all of our problems.
So those are like the most used items in my kit. I also have like lotion.
You have hand sanitizer.
Sanitizer.
Because like that's always, if anybody has to touch my face ever, I'm like.
Sometimes they have like
all hand sanitizer.
A lip situation, those types of things. Or wet wipes, because I believe there was a chocolate moment also on our project.
There was a chocolate moment, wasn't there? There was a chocolate moment. I've learned from you in that like I now have essentially a mini kit in my set in my set bag because not every intimacy coordinator is as like bulletproof prepared as you are. So like I have my own Listerine mouth spray. I have spray hand sanitizer. I always keep at least 2 pairs of underwear in my bag. That's 1, because liquid gets spilled on us all the time. And 2, because you never, like if there's a scene where I don't maybe feel like completely good about the coverage, it's like, great, just pop on another pair of underwear.
Yeah.
Good.
The modesty shorts.
I have modesty shorts.
Yeah. I also have, I just noticed, little Polaroids from like different sets. This is one from you and Aaron.
Is that the car?
That is the car.
Is that the notorious car?
The car.
Can like sort of see
like,
us. You can sort of see
I know it was really dark that day. Speaking of which, shall we?
I think we should take a trip down memory lane.
Yeah, we should. I think so too.
Inappropriate. You're really gonna use that excuse with me? Do I have to remind you of everything we did back in that room at the club?
We started in the front seat and we talked for a long time.
I feel like sometimes it's difficult when it's like intimacy and a lot of dialogue that's happening.
Yes, definitely. That's been the thing that I've come into the most issues with, is because like now you're remembering not only your lines, but all the things you have to do.
Yeah, I feel like what's really interesting is like when there's a whole bulk of dialogue and the intimacy moments are happening in between all of it. So it's like, say this line and then your hand goes into her hair. Say this line and then your hand has to land over here on his chest.
So when you come from live theater like I do, that's everything. I'm remembering blocking as part of the whole gig, and music theater especially, there's dance there. So I feel like that's one of my strong suits. That's why I'm able to pick up the choreography so fast, because that's what it is. It's choreography.
It's choreography.
And so like interspersing dialogue with it is not as much of a challenge for me, but I know that like it's tough. It's definitely tough on these long days when you're shooting so quickly. That's one of the hardest things.
Definitely. I feel like what is very interesting is a lot of folks actually come from stunts or dance into IC work, just because there is so much choreography. There is so much body movement and like learning about how to storytell in that place, like shifting power between the two characters, which means shifting weight between the two characters, and like where hands land, what works for each person. Breath, of course, a lot of breath.
You're having to remember so many things at once. And I think that like just huge kudos to our team and to like Aaron for all the hard work that we put in, because that was like for the strip club scene.
Well, Sylvia, say something.
I don't have anything to say to you. You're my professor, for God's sake. This is my life. You can't tell me what to do. So just leave me alone and let me work.
that was a long day.
That was a
and
whole
we were
sequence.
there was a sequence and it was like boom, boom, we're here, we're on the wall, we're turning around, we're moving to the couch. It's like, and we made it flow, and I genuinely don't think it could have happened with any other team, like in the way that it did and with the result that it had.
Yeah. Shall we watch the rest of this? Let's see.
Smoochies.
I also feel like what I would love audiences to know is like we talk about how many beats a kiss lasts and how intense it is. Like 1 out of 10, like how intense it is. That way we can adjust numbers up or adjust numbers down.
I know a lot of intimacy coordinators use skin contact versus muscle contact. So like skin contact would be just like brushing the face, whereas muscle contact, that's you're gripping. And a lot of what makes something look more intense is just like fingertips pressing into skin.
Right.
And so there's a lot of that involved.
Like
and just
molding clay. I like to use that analogy. Yeah.
now we're moving into our sexy times.
Right. Right now.
Olivia, if you would explain how we sold this.
So I think for scenes like this, a lot of people don't know that everything is so meticulously choreographed. So when I say this, it means like all of the close-up shots, we're designating where hands are landing. Like, does it go here? Where on the thigh? How many seconds is there a motion where the fingers are going to squeeze a little bit? We talk about all of those details. That way we can nail it.
Yeah, and it was like Aaron moving his shoulders.
Right, so that we can sell things with the actors doing the least amount as possible. I like to always have like an anchor point.
Anchor point. I was going to say, you're big on anchor points.
I love anchor points. So basically for anchor points, what that is, and we've worked together on this, is having a hand land on a scene partner within a designated boundary so that we can coordinate the reactions. So for something like this where we're seeing mostly your faces, like it's maybe a hand on a leg, and then
I think his hand was on my knee. Like I genuinely think that when we were on the faces, his hand was on my knee, because also like him having to go any closer to my hip area would have been awkward, and he couldn't cheat out towards camera. So that's another thing, is like it's not only selling it to camera, it's also making sure that your face is out towards camera.
That you could see what's happening. And then so with the anchor point, it's like, okay, if you squeeze, that means that's the moment for the reaction. So you both can be in sync with it.
Yeah.
So like it's really funny to me, because also cars are so hard for intimacy, because you got the center console.
There's a center console, but
then you have to be like so close to one another for the shot. It's very meticulous.
What do you want, Miss Parker?
I want you.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
I want you, Professor Calhoun.
So I think what is also interesting is for all of these close-ups, it happens separately from everything else. So like if there's any moments of like removing of underwear, we're literally putting the underwear here. You have modesty garments
right, because
on.
I'm sitting, we did a lot of underwear removal in this one.
Yeah.
So like I'm sitting on the underwear in the scene, because that's how it works. So it's awkward if I have to go like this, and like then my body is leaving frame, because we're in a vertical frame.
Right.
So we do inserts.
Lots
of
inserts.
Insert of the hand going up the leg, insert of the underwear removal.
And we designate like where the underwear is. And it's usually right about here, like mid-thigh. Like it wouldn't normally be all the way up here, because it would take forever.
And
it would be like
you would have to
funky.
move out of frame. The frame is too tight to do a lot of that blocking consecutively all the way through. So this is like really chopped up into chunks depending on what they want. Because also intimacy scenes are physically exhausting, especially a heavy level of intimacy and up to simulated sex you're physically very demanding. So having to run them through top to bottom for as many times as they need the shots for every angle wouldn't be possible.
Right. I also would love to talk about the underwear on the rear view.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this insert of him pulling the underwear, that was an accident. It was like Aaron, can you do this? And we're like, we'll try. And then he does it.
And makes it. It was lovely.
Yeah. And then the fog on the window was Aaron and I going before the take. We had to fog it up ourselves.
And what I love is just like those movie magic moments happen when everybody feels safe and they feel comfortable.
Because I feel good about trying things because I feel good about the environment that I'm in and the environment that you created. I feel like I'm able to try new things, and when someone, I'm much more likely to say yes to something because I feel like the floor is kind of open and I'm protected. I remember for that back of the car, the actual simulated sex, we tried many positions to figure out what was right.
Yeah, I feel like with cars, it's so difficult, like choreographing things because of the
back
tiny
seat is not as long as a human body.
Right. The tiny spaces of everything. So really, when you get the frame like here, the two actors' bodies can be so far apart. And I think that's one thing that audiences may not know is like, I feel like most of my job is having actors do the least amount while making it look like they're doing the most.
Yeah. There was probably like a solid foot of space between us just to get the framing right.
Yeah.
Because I'm also somewhat tall. And so that was definitely a worrisome thing when we're like, we're going to do what in the back of the car?
Right. And I think a lot of it is also just selling the performances, you know, that when you have incredible actors like yourself, like to sell those performances, to like really engage into that moment, that's what really makes all of that.
Yeah. That shoot was really just a prime example of like best case scenario, and like everything worked out. And you see it with the product, like that we got such good footage. We got such good footage of everything because of how hard everyone was working and also how much respect there was on that set, just for professional opinions and safety.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes actors tell me, they're like, Olivia, I don't know why you're having me do this. So for example, right, if we're talking about a simulated oral sex scene, a lot of the times what's happening is there is, let's say this is a thigh, someone's ear is mid-thigh and they're just doing this.
Yep.
And it's like everything from certain camera angles just makes it look real. Even in our project, we had that. And I'm amazed that you all just trusted me. You're like, sure.
There should not be a moment in which in specifically like simulated sex, simulated oral sex, penetration of any sort, that an actor is like, whoa, what did you just do? Even if it wasn't distinctly inappropriate, I don't want to be surprised. Yeah. I do not want to be surprised.
Not in this. We don't want surprises.
Yeah. So making sure that everyone is on the same page and very clear is, I would say, of the utmost importance.
Yeah, for sure.
Does anyone ever like misunderstand what your role is?
All the time. I feel
what
like...
What do they think you do? Okay. What do they think?
I like to say this is like, I think sometimes they think we're COVID compliance, as in like bring on the intimacy coordinator as long as someone's standing there, like we're compliant with everything. And I think a lot of the misconception is that they think intimacy coordinators are just to stand there and like to be there on set, when the bulk of our work happens during pre-production. Like I need my pre-production days because that's where we're planning for all of these intimacy scenes. On the day, it's going to take forever if I have to facilitate all of these conversations.
Yeah.
And there's just no time, especially when we're working on verticals. Things are moving so fast in such a fast-paced environment that there's no time to sit down for 2 hours and have these detailed conversations. So all of that needs to happen during pre-production. And then also talking to different departments, such as like, you know, costumes, like, hey, we need modesty garments, we need barriers. Like these are all the things that we need. We're going to have multiple changes for this. We need a bare back moment. So maybe we need sticky bra or pasties. And like thinking through all of those details and sending it off to different departments is the bulk of my work, is pre-production. And I think that is something that is really misunderstood. There's SAG guidelines, and how that works is, as of 2024, anytime an actor requests an intimacy coordinator, production has to do their best to provide one. So that's like a safeguard. And also, I think one of the other misconceptions is like, we're not only just there for the actors, we're there to reduce risk for production, which is a huge thing that we do, because we are looking through the contracts and the nudity writers and all of that stuff for production, making sure all the boxes are checked, making sure all the things like are squared away before we get to set to reduce the risk of anything happening, preventing legal issues, all of that stuff. And I think that's something that people may not understand. And sometimes I've also run into the case of where one actor isn't really into working with an intimacy coordinator, but the other one is. And I'm all for it because of my advocacy background. For me, it's about how best to support each individual.
Right.
So I'll meet you where you are. Whether you're a director or an actor, I meet you where you are. And I think that's something that is often misunderstood, is that there are also so many other people, the crew, the background.
You're an intimacy coordinator, not an intimacy director.
Right. And all of those other folks also need to have informed consent.
Right.
So if we have background and then they're witnessing like the two lead actors in like intimacy, they should
know that that's happening.
Yeah, I'll be calling them
Because
up.
sometimes background doesn't get the script.
Right, they don't.
So they don't actually know what they're watching, or they see the call sheet and they're like, who and who have sex?
Right.
And I'm in that?
Right. And I think the other thing is like, I think some people are steered away because they think that having an intimacy coordinator makes things like less spicy or less passionate, when
I would argue it's the opposite.
it's the complete opposite, because you're creating an environment where the risk is reduced. We're creating comfort. Well,
because there are so many things that I just wouldn't do if there weren't an intimacy coordinator.
oh, yeah.
Because I would be like, well, that's too, like, that's a liability. That's a risk for me because I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. Like, there's nobody here that is, I don't know, overseeing that. And even if the director's like, well, I'll oversee that, will you?
And also everybody else is doing so many other things.
You have other jobs.
Right.
Like, you're watching the acting. I don't really need you to tell him where to anchor his hand to look like he's digitally penetrating, you know?
Right.
That's not your job. And so to have a designated person whose job it is really valuable.
I love my job.
I love your job. I love your job. ReelShort is always super good about having intimacy coordinators, stunt coordinators on every single set. I've never had to be like, hey, why don't we have an intimacy coordinator for this? I love to be a self-advocate personally. And so I would always say something, but I have been on sets with other companies that have like tried to get away with not having an intimacy coordinator for certain things, and my co-star expressed discomfort with that. And so I was like, hey, where's the intimacy coordinator if you guys want us to do this? You want a straddle? Oh, we should have an intimacy coordinator for this. And so it can be hard, but I think at the very least, everyone should ask for one.
I think so too. I
If
think
there's even a question in your mind of like, am I comfortable with this?
I've also noticed like usually the crew feels a lot more relaxed when there is an intimacy coordinator on set, because though a lot of the crew don't necessarily have, any training in intimacy coordinating, or just in general knowing how to approach these sensitive scenes.
Right. Or a lot of them don't understand like a closed set. So can you explain to us what a closed set is?
So closed set is minimizing the amount of crew to pretty much who just needs to be in the set for filming. So it's usually the camera, obviously.
Yes.
Sound. And then usually the monitors are outside of the room with the director, scriptee, and intimacy coordinator. Once in a while, depending on the project and depending on actors' comfort levels, we'll have a producer behind the camera, like that sort of thing. But just minimizing it to just whoever absolutely needs to be there to do the job for it to be filmed, essentially. Right. Yeah. And it creates an environment where actors, I feel like, also feel more comfortable, because otherwise it's like 30 people just staring at you, and some people are on their phones or like they're doing other things, and it could be really distracting.
Whenever the question is asked, do you want a closed set? I pretty much always say yes, even if it's like not necessarily needed, just because if you're asking, that means there's probably an element of this scene that might feel a little vulnerable, because like, people love to rip each other's clothes off in a mean way in verticals. And so I feel like whenever there's a scene like that, it's not necessarily intimacy. It might just be like one button popping off. But I'll always say like, yeah, I'd like a closed set, because, maybe there's a costume malfunction and the whole shirt comes off by accident. And so I just think that like asking is always okay, and like having an intimacy coordinator there to actually enforce it. Because as an actor, I sometimes am like, I don't know who's in the room. I can't pay attention to that because I have to ignore the giant camera in my face.
Right.
So it's really nice to just have an advocate there to support that. And I think that another really important aspect of intimacy coordinating is consent and informed consent, like you said. Because for me, I don't love the language in verticals of written in the script when they get a little dicey with consent. Like when the female lead is saying no or something adjacent to no, and the male lead is being intimate with her. So I will tell every intimacy coordinator I work with, like, I want to make this scene as consensual as possible with the dialogue that we've been given. Because I am not interested in telling a story of someone who does not want to be intimate with someone, having intimacy forced upon them, and then ending up with that person. I don't think that that's healthy. I don't think that that is, with the amount of like platform that we have as actors, that is not a story that I want to tell.
And that's an absolutely like a hard boundary for a lot of folks, I feel like. And what I think a lot of my job also is building in consent, because even if the dialogue hasn't built that in, we can build it in physically. Mm-hmm. Like maybe she closes the distance and maybe she's the one that initiates. Maybe she pulls him closer. Mm-hmm. And those are all these beautiful micro moments, I feel like, on verticals that I've been able to choreograph and add in so that we go from this like murky consent space to a fully consensual.
Well, there wasn't a ton of that in Surrender to My Professor because I do feel like Sylvia was the one initiating a lot of the intimacy, but there was some of it because very often the female characters are written as more meek and passive, and as everybody knows, I am not meek and passive. I'm big and loud and hitting things. So kind of marrying my own personality with that of this character that's been written to be more naive is like, no, I don't want to play someone who just lets things happen to her. So I'm going to work with the intimacy coordinator about making this as clear as possible via physicality that, like, I'm an active participant. I'm an active and willing participant. Because I think that, and just like you and your role helps merge that performance aspect too.
Right. And I think a lot of times it's also having informed consent and ongoing consent for actors. So pre-production is like talking about every little detail. So you're informed on what you're going to be performing.
I'm also like constantly pushing back against the like corruption of innocence trope. I'm like, why do I have to be dressed like that? Like, I love a modest fit. I feel like I can pull off a little like skin coverings, but I'm like, but you can't have bare skin if you're not showing bare skin.
Right.
And so we're having like someone like you on my team where you foresee that problem happening before I get to set.
Oh.
Makes my job easier.
And that's on consent.
And that's on consent.
And it's ongoing. Like, I think that's something that's really important for folks to know as well, is that, yes, you may have signed the contract and agreed to do it, but if on the day it's like you don't want to do it, you still have the right to say, okay, actually, like, I'm not.
If that doesn't feel good in your body.
Yeah.
And I've been in that position before where I've started to do an action. I've been like, no, this actually doesn't feel good in my body. Whatever reason it is, I was just like, I don't have to justify this.
Right.
I just don't feel good doing it.
Yeah, I tell actors that all the time. I don't need to know why you have that boundary.
I feel like we always are like, well, it's because of, and
I'm like, no, just
honestly don't care.
You don't want your hair touched? Great. Okay, we won't do that.
Yeah.
And then it's like finding those moments where I go back to production and like renegotiate, like, hey, like, so we can tell the story in this other way.
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Or figuring out, because often like a lot of these productions will be very stubborn about exactly what they want. They want a hair pull. But you know, I'm not good getting my hair touched. So then you get the very, very tricky, difficult job of figuring out how can we meet both of these people where they're at.
Right, exactly.
Like it's not a compromise. It is, we are going to respect each of the people's desires and you're going to make it happen. You're going to do something.
It's a lot of creative problem solving,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, it's just so clear, Olivia, that you're incredibly gifted and good at what you do, and I love working with you.
Working with you too.
And I
Thank
love
you.
chatting with you, and I think we should commemorate our time on ReelTalk together. Do you think we should take a selfie?
We should take a selfie.
Should we take a ReelTalk selfie?
ReelTalk selfie.
Okay.